Sport24 chief writer Rob Howing is off to the UK this week for the group stages of the ICC Champions Trophy. He's with us in studio this morning to give us a quick preview before he jets off. Rob, good morning. Thank you very much for popping in.
Morning, Nick.
I'm sure you're very much looking forward to this trip, and let's hope that the weather plays ball. Just the group stages, though. Does that mean you're not backing the Proteas on making the playoffs?
No, not at all. I can rest assured. I still think that the Proteas have a good shout at this tournament. A real lottery it is, and pleasingly so. It actually makes for, I think, really intriguing cricket in a short, sharp sort of 18-day burst. It was just the way that our scheduling worked out, and of course, without knowing necessarily where or who you're going to play, I just took the opportunity to get to all the group stage games. They're going to be interesting enough in themselves because we play the three subcontinent teams, three of the major subcontinent teams in a row in our little group of four, starting with Sri Lanka at the Oval on Saturday, which I think a lot of South Africans will feel is the one that we want to get off to a good start in. Put it this way: if we lose that one, I think we might just be in a little hint of trouble because you pretty much need to win. You need to aim to win a minimum of 2 out of 3, obviously, to qualify for the semis under the sort of very simple, sort of short type format. So vital that South Africa hit the ground running in that particular match on Saturday.
Well, let's talk about the format. As you say, it's very simple, very much a strength versus strength. 2 pools of 4 teams, the top 8 sides in the world, and obviously yes, the top 2 from each group going through to the semis and then the final. Who poses the biggest threat in South Africa's group, in your opinion?
I would say probably India, Nick. I mean, they're always a good one-day side. They have an immensely powerful, very established, experienced batting lineup. Lots of explosive stroke players in there. You throw in your sort of Dhawans, Dhonis, Rahanis, Virat Kohli. It's an awesome batting lineup. And the Indians these days also have a pretty decent seam attack. So they are able to offer something that perhaps in past years they weren't necessarily guaranteed to do in, for instance, English conditions. Getting a few seamers who can nip the ball around a bit. A couple of guys who are quite sharpish as well. Plus, of course, you've got Mr. Ashwin to provide some pretty quality off-spin too. So they have a very well-balanced sort of side. And we play them in our last game back at the Oval after a middle game against Pakistan at Edgbaston. People are saying, and I think rightly so, that in some ways South Africa can't complain too much about their group because in a really tough a tournament like this, where you're not going to have too many sort of easy games anyway, you might argue that in English conditions, South Africa should be backed quite substantially to beat, especially I would say, Pakistan and Sri Lanka. So that immediately suggests that they might get off to a good start. If they're 2 from 2 with just India to play, it'll be quite a nice relaxed sort of situation for them to go into that final game. You don't want to have too much pressure on them. We know that the Proteas have a certain C word that sort of inevitably buzzes around in the air whenever they're at a major tournament. That's just a fact of life. They've got to deal with it. As I say, that they'll want to have a nice head of steam before they hit that final game against India, which potentially is the sort of the pothole game, if you like, for them. They've got to be very mindful of the fact that India will pose a major threat. But it's not the worst group because the group of death is probably the other group where you have the host nation, England, who've just beaten South Africa 2-1 in a one-day series and generally played pretty well in it, especially at the key times. And then Australia and New Zealand. Okay, Bangladesh are in there as well. Don't write them off, but I think a lot of people will be saying that's your 4th team in that little group. And then it's the sort of the group of death scenario is really New Zealand, England, and Australia. Which of those 3 pegs goes into the sort of proverbial round hole sort of thing, So that group might be the one that has really special interest. But there's room for plenty of curveballs, just given the format of the tournament across both the groups.